And right when it clicks over to 8 o'clock, start the music.
And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another amazing installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. Speaking of insipid forms of Wyoming media, we begin this morning in the Cowpie in an article entitled 25% Property Tax Cut Has Cities and Counties Expecting to Cut Budgets. First, let me say, my friends, that there is not a budget in this world that cannot sustain a 10% tax cut or a 10% cut. Frankly, there isn't any budget that probably couldn't sustain a 15% cut. So why is it that counties and towns across the Cowboy State are thinking that this cut in taxes is going to lead to a devastating impact to their budgets? Well, it's because they're used to spending tremendous amounts of money. They can't stop spending money. And because they've spent so much from the before COVID until now, they think that any reduction whatsoever is going to be devastating. Well, the truth is, they think that it'll be devastating to their redcoat Democrat liberal voting base. And that is absolutely the truth, my friends. From the article, and I quote, the implementation of a 25% residential tax cut has local governments around Wyoming, large and small, nervously eyeing their upcoming budgets. Weston County, the second smallest county in the state, and this is the fascinating part about this article, my friends, that Weston County is the second smallest county, and listen to these numbers. Weston County is projecting to collect $1.3 million less as a result of the property tax cuts based on its $12.8 million general fund budget last year. That would represent a nearly 10% hit. How is it possible that the second smallest county in the entire Cowboy State has a budget of $12.8 million? It's absolutely incredible. They don't really have the amount of citizens to even justify a budget of that size. Weston County Assessor Kara Leonardson expects the general fund alone to take a $200,000 reduction. Weston County Commissioners Nathan Todd said he could see potential cuts in the county attorney's office and within the county fair. And here's the county fair part is part of the issue. We are using taxpayer dollars to pay for things that are in no way the correct or the proper role of government. Show me anywhere in the Constitution, in any town's charter, anywhere that it is the job of taxpayers to pay for a county fair. Now, it is true that in the Wyoming, it's either in statute or the Wyoming Constitution, I can't remember which, But each county does have to have a fairgrounds. However, it does not say that each county has to pay for a fair and rodeo. Secondarily, I would say if a county is paying for a fair and rodeo, I mean, that's absolutely a waste of taxpayer dollars. Government should only pay for those things that are truly necessary. Police, fire. I like some nice smooth roads to drive on. You got to have some sort of administration of the government, public utilities. But beyond that, really, the role of the government is really small. But counties like Weston County have expanded government to such an extent that it's paying for a whole bunch of things that it was never meant to do. Now, let's talk about Park County for a minute. And by the way, in a little bit, I'm going to play you part of an interview that I did yesterday with Bob Ferguson. Bob is running for the vice chairman of the Wyoming Republican Party. So I've got that here in just a few minutes, probably after the first break. But listen to this, and let's see here. Let me just throw this quotation up on the screen. Hold on just a second, Mr. Producer. I'm almost there from current slide. There we go. All right. Quote, in Park County, the commission chairman, Dossie Overfield, said her county is expecting a roughly $2.5 million tax revenue reduction, which will result in a 5% less general fund revenue than in 2024. All right. So that this first part, they're only taking a 5% hit. But listen to this next part. This is the kicker, Mr. Producer. And I quote, Overfield said the Park County budget has already been inflated by COVID-era federal grants in recent years, something that is now going to go away. That is the point, my friends, that counties and cities increased their budgets because they were awash in COVID money. That's the whole reason. Now, the truth is, had they not spent all of that money, they wouldn't be taking a cut right now. But it's absolutely infuriating that county commissioners and city council people have the temerity to argue that they have to be able to spend that money that they never should have spent in the first place.
The other side of it, of course, is the bulge in property taxes over the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
So they got that income, and they should have known, with all the rumbling, with the public out there crying for some sort of relief, that was going to come, even if they had to do it themselves. It's just kind of foolishness to spend all the fat of the land.
Well, that's exactly right. And I mean, and the truth is, if you go through a period of extreme wealth, or you're making a lot of money, you're foolish if you're not putting some of that cash away. But therein lies another problem, is that a lot of Wyoming communities, and I'm not saying specifically Park County or Weston County, but definitely Sheridan, definitely Johnson County, definitely Natrona County, and oh my God, this is true in Laramie County, there are huge reserve accounts in the millions of dollars. In Johnson County, I think that there's something like 2.5 years worth of revenue that's just stashed away and they haven't spent. And so now above all, they're complaining about this giant, what they're saying is a giant tax cut, or a giant drop in revenue. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But the point is, my friends, is that anytime you have a drop in revenue, these redcoats want to scream bloody murder. And they're never going to let it go because they're so used to spending. And, the truth is, government doesn't need to be that big, and there's no reason why they should continue doing that. Now, that's also the reason why some counties have decided to do their own, and not willingly, by the way, have decided to do their own Doge version of Doge, that is. In Sheridan County, it's the Republican Party that passed a resolution that we're going to take a look at all of the government spending and find out exactly what is waste and what is abuse of taxpayer money. Now, of course, the city council and the county commissioners aren't real happy about that, because they know that they have been spending like drunken sailors. No, that's wrong. Sailors are spending their own money. These folks are far worse than that. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible, my friends. And it is absolutely unconscionable that you would be on the city council and you would demand the ability to spend money that you should have been spending in the first place, all because you're swimming in funds from COVID. And it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, but we really want to support the dog and cat shelter.
Oh, don't get me going. The doggies and kitties. That is not the role of government. In fact, the Wyoming Constitution, I think it's Article 16, Section 6, says you can't give our money to any private organization unless it is necessary support for the poor. And I'll even give you, a very broad definition of what necessary support for the poor is. But the doggy and kitty shelter, doesn't fit in there, nor does the Arts Council, nor does the Humanities Council, nor does the Wyoming Business Council, nor does any of those other groups or paying for stupid statues on Main Street.
Some of you may doubt my ability to push buttons, but I think I just proved it.
Yeah, I believe you did. Yes. And and by the way, Agent 29, I was down at the University of Wyoming last Thursday for the Charlie Kirk event, and I hadn't been there in, 15, 20 years. I was shocked at the opulence of that place. Huge, new, giant buildings, statues along sidewalks that aren't even main thoroughfares through the campus. But we have to have a statue. We have to have, beautifully crafted landscaping. It's no wonder why the University of Wyoming goes to the legislature, every single year, and demands more money. And it's almost like 70 million here, 170 million there. We need 200 million. It never ends. But when you look at what we're paying for down there, it's absolutely shocking. You want to get me going. By the way, we should probably take a break since we need to pay some bills, and then play the Bob Ferguson interview. So we'll do that coming up next. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. It's almost like I'm everywhere. Well, if you include the Cowboy State Politics podcast, that's absolutely true. It's available just about everywhere that you get your podcasts. Amazon, YouTube, iHeartRadio, iTunes. I mean, it's everywhere. So anyway, check out the podcast. Make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to sit down with current Wyoming State GOP Treasurer Bob Ferguson. Now he's running for running to be the vice chairman of the Republican Party. We had a nice discussion yesterday. Here's just a portion of that interview. Now, why did you decide to run for vice chairman? It sounds like you're pretty well steeped in all the finances and fundraising.
Yep.
Why make the switch to vice chairman instead of just staying the treasurer?
Right. Well, the first thing I did 2 weeks ago, and it was a fairly recent decision, I've thought about it, but first thing I did was reach out to David Hall. And, I talked to him about it, that I was thinking about running for vice chair. He was very encouraging. He said he'd support me, despite what Cowboy State Daily said. So I talked to David. He was very encouraging. And then, frankly, I talked to Brian Miller because even at that late stage, there was still some question of whether Brian was running for chair, whether he was running for vice chair, what the real story was. So I talked to Brian, and he kind of still said he was undecided. I guess he hadn't officially announced to run for chair at that point, but he gave me his reasons for running for chair, which are fine. I don't have any problem with anybody changing their mind. But once it was clear that that was his decision, I thought, you know what? I think I can be more effective in the vice chair role. Certainly a voting member on the executive committee. The treasurer is an appointed, non-voting. But I've got the experience of being on the executive committee for 6 years. I think that goes a long way for somebody that necessarily hasn't had that background. Other than that, we just have Donna Rice as secretary, Corey Steinmetz and Nina Weber as committee man and committee woman, as the only ones with real executive committee experience.
Have you ever worked with Rebecca before, or is this going to be the first go around? If she's successful, and if you were successful?
Yeah, if she's successful, to be perfectly honest with you, I've worked with both her and Brian. I've worked with Rebecca, really got to know her well over the last year. I'm 100% convinced that she's a strong platform conservative like myself. We haven't found one plank in the platform that either one of us disagree with or want to change. And I've worked with Brian on budget and audit committee. I've chaired that for the last 6 years. I've chaired the fundraising committee before Rebecca came along. Once we realized her skill set, I was very happy to turn that over to her. But we've worked together quite a bit. I'm not running as on a ticket, like Brian and Ginger are. But, I totally feel that I could work with either one of them. But, I've spent a lot of time working with Rebecca over in Jackson and, really think that she's a real deal.
Okay, hold on just a second. I want to talk just briefly about this whole running as a slate business. I've never thought it was a good idea, simply because what happens if somebody doesn't like the person you're running with? Well, then you get taken down too. But I think it is strategically a bad move. And let me explain why. Because it reduces the amount of chances that the body actually has to vote. Whether it's in an election, of course, we don't have slates of candidates in any of in the primary election or in the general election. That we just don't do that. But it's in private organizations that this whole slate thing happens. We saw it, and this is one of the big dangers. We saw it during the legislative session, or right before the legislative session, when the Senate decided to vote for leadership. You had Senator Slithers, Benedict Bo Beitman, and Tim Salazar all together as a slate, and they convinced the body to vote that way. Well, what happens if you don't like Bo and you like Slithers? God forbid, or the reverse, that you think that Bo Biteman would have been a good president, and maybe you wanted somebody else like Sherry Steinmetz or Larry Hicks or Darren Smith or whatever. You wanted somebody else as vice chairman. So strategically, I think it's a bad move. Secondly, I think that you intentionally reduce the amount of chances for voters. And I don't know why you would want to do that. I mean, strategically, it's a bad idea. But, in this case, if you're running as a slate, I guess if one of them goes down, they all go down. All right, let's continue with the video.
To tell you the truth, Rebecca's best qualities, people are going to think, well, as treasurer, considering the money that she's brought in, I'm going to say fundraising. And it's not. It's her enthusiasm and passion. That is what gets donors interested. That is what is contagious. And, it takes somebody with the amount of energy that she's got to really draw people to the party. So I mean, fundraising is a close second, definitely. But I think it's her personality and her passion that is really great.
Now, unlike the chairman race, I've heard of a number of different people that may throw their name in the hat for the vice chairman role. And I think it's a fair question to ask you. Why should members of the state central committee vote for you, ahead of all those other folks that might jump in the race?
Right. Yeah, I know. I've heard probably 3 names total, including myself. Not too many. So you may have a little bit more inside information than I did. Obviously, Ginger's the most prevalent out there because she's running, with Brian. And I've dealt with Ginger since I've been on the executive committee for many years. Totally respect her, and believe that frankly, her, Brian, me, and Rebecca are 4 conservatives vying for those 2 positions, and I think that's a great position to be in. So I am not running against anybody in particular. I am running for the simple fact that I think my experience on the executive committee, really being deeply involved in party decisions, particularly from the financial side, brings a whole perspective to how things should be run, at the executive level.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and take a break there. You can listen to the rest of that interview on the Cowboy State Politics podcast that's going to air tomorrow during our Wednesday broadcast. It really is a good interview. Mr. Producer, you were here for the interview. I mean, what did you take away from it?
Well, certainly no funding, but no, it was good. And it's one of the things you commented when you came in this morning. You had to go back and listen to it to understand how good it was. When you're doing the technical aspect of it, you're kind of hearing, but you're not listening. But I don't think we're going to go wrong one way or the other. We're going to make ourselves into an effective party.
Oh, yeah. And I think that Bob absolutely was right, that however this election goes, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. Now, my personal opinion is if Rebecca Bextel is elected as chairwoman, I think you're going to see a lot more fundraising opportunities than if you were to go the other way. But I mean, they're both conservatives, and I think that we'll probably be okay. Now, of course, and this leads to the other thing that's been stuck in my craw all morning long, and that's this idea of unity. Now,
spooky language. Spooky language.
So you hear politicians utter this word all the time, unity, that we're going to come together, that we're going to have bipartisanship. The truth is, you can only have unity if you have 2 honest brokers. And we all know that one of the seminal characteristics of being a redcoat is that you're not an honest broker because you're claiming to be something that you're not. Let me explain. The folks that I'm referring to as redcoats claim to be Republicans, but their voting record shows you something else entirely, that they vote with the Democrats 80% of the time. Now, there are contingents in the Wyoming Republican Party that are not in any way conservative, that they've proven themselves to be spendthrift liberals. Take, for example, Elizabeth Bingham. Now, personally, I think that she's very cordial. She's always been really nice to me, but I couldn't disagree more with her politics. During the legislative session, it was Elizabeth Bingham that was advocating for more government spending, for restrictions on, and restrictions is kind of the wrong word, because the bill that comes to mind is the What is a Woman Act. Now, of course, Elizabeth Bingham is from Sweetwater County, and we all know, because of a investigation by Cowboy State Politics into drag shows in Rock Springs, that it's not exactly the most conservative place. Their county party is not the most conservative. Tony Nemec is one of the, and I haven't run the numbers on him for a while, but he was one of the biggest redcoats in the Wyoming legislature when he was in office, voting with the Democrats and the liberals whenever he got a chance. So to have unity with somebody who is claiming to be something that they're not, first of all, I mean, that should be your first clue right out of the gate, because it's not really possible to have unity. Bipartisanship really means, and anytime you hear some politician utter the word bipartisanship, here's what they really mean. Check your principles at the door, do it our way, and sacrifice everything that you consider to be good. And in that way, then we can have bipartisanship. One of my favorite Rush Limbaugh speeches was when he was at CPAC in 2009, and he talked about this very thing. Play cut number 3.
Let's say, as conservatives, liberals demand that we be bipartisan with them in Congress. What they mean is we check our core principles at the door, come in, let them run the show, and then agree with them. That's bipartisanship to them. To us, bipartisanship is them being forced to agree with us after we have politically cleaned their clocks and beaten them. And that has to be what we're focused on. Why would any of us in this room who hold the core beliefs we believe, somebody tell me, where is the compromise on all of this spending? Where is the compromise on all this punishment of the achievers?
That is the seminal question right there. You hear all these folks say bipartisanship and unity and compromise. Well, what is the compromise? Now, I was always told that a compromise is a deal in which neither party is happy, but you have an agreement. Now, if that is a compromise, why is it then that we always do it the liberals' way? Think about the Wyoming Senate, for example. Before the thing ever started, there was a compromise that had been made. And we need to put like giant quotation marks around the screen. But when we utter the phrase compromise or bipartisanship, because it's total bullcrap. Let me explain what the compromise was. Well, you get to be the president of the Senate, and we'll give you another meaningless position in the vice president. But the folks that are going to run the show, well, that's Senator Slithers. Yeah, she's going to be
spooky language. Spooky language.
So it's going to be Senator Slithers, who's the majority floor leader, and you're going to give up 7 of the 10 committees to liberal chairman. That sounds like a heck of a deal. I mean, sign me up. Not, but that's exactly what so-called conservatives in the Wyoming Senate voted for. Now, there's a group of them that didn't vote for that knew exactly what was going to happen, and that was more government spending, killing the immigration bill, killing any sort of thing that would deal with this carbon capture stuff and all this bullcrap green stuff that comes out of the governor's downstairs office. The truth is, my friends, that there is no compromise with liberals because they fundamentally don't believe in it. And to say, if you're a conservative and you're one of these people that's saying, well, we need to have unity. First question, what principle are you unifying on? What are the core principles around the deal that you're making? If it is not in the Republican Party, if it is not the 23 planks of the Republican Party platform, then you don't have a compromise at all. In fact, you're dealing with people that don't fundamentally believe the same thing that you do. The reason why Republicans have a hard time dealing with liberals is we have entirely 2 different worldviews. The liberals believe that the ends justify the means, that it doesn't matter how they get to their end goal as long as they get there. So if their end goal is, say, Obamacare, it doesn't matter if they lie to the American people and say that you can, if you love your doctor, you can keep your doctor, when they never meant that to begin with. It's okay to say this is a good deal for Wyoming. It could be. Oh, wait, no, that was Nancy Case. My point is that liberals will do anything to get to their end goal. Now, conservatives, we look at the world entirely differently. We would never argue that it doesn't matter what we do to get to our end goal. To us, the way that you achieve a goal, the way that you play a game is at least as important as the game itself. When those two worldviews are competing, you can't have any compromise because you're trying to deal with a group of people that will lie and stick a sharp thing in your back at the first chance that they get. To them, it is all about power. And until you understand that, this whole unity, bipartisanship, all of this language surrounding it is nothing but a fantasy. And if you're the candidate that is telling the people that you want to vote for, that you want to vote for you, that you're running on unity and bipartisanship, you're lying to them from the very beginning. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a subject that I'm betting that you never thought I would be against. But I've given a lot of thought, and I don't like this bill coming out of Congress about the AM radio. We'll talk about it here in just a second. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. A record that Wyoming media and the mainstream media, for that matter, can't ever compete with because, well, they lie to you all the time. There's a bill in Congress, and this seems to be kind of a reoccurring theme, to save AM radio. Now, no one can argue that AM radio wasn't on its deathbed until Rush Limbaugh came along. Well, I mean, Rush Limbaugh definitely, and then the rest of conservative talk radio. Had it not been for Rush Limbaugh, AM radio would be dead and buried, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. And the truth is that liberal talk radio doesn't and hasn't ever worked. It does not resonate with the people who listen to AM radio. And just think about this, right? If you're the working guy and you're out in the middle of the Wyoming prairie, maybe you work on an oil rig, maybe you work at the uranium mine, maybe you're one of those unfortunate souls that got hired to put up a windmill, whatever. the likelihood is that the only radio station that you can hear is either a satellite radio, which you have to pay for, or an AM radio, because you're just not going to get an FM station out in the middle of the boondocks. Certainly not around Powder River or Dead Horse Creek, or even if you're up on the mountain. Now, the truth is, when you're on the top of the mountain, sure, you can get all sorts of radio stations. But if you want to listen to your local news, the only place that you can hear it is on an AM station. Now, in cars, there has been a fight in Congress for a really long time to try to prevent, and that is actually a word that these folks are using, prevent automakers from doing away with AM radios. And here's the reason why. And actually, you know what? Play cut number 1.
Car makers like Tesla, Ford, and BMW have been quietly dropping AM radio for years, and their reasons are a mix of profit and practicality. It starts with cost. Adding the AM radio receiver might only run a few dollars per vehicle, but multiply that over millions of cars, and it's a bit more to the bottom line, and they want to save some money. Then there's the tech angle. Electric vehicles or EVs dominate the future for now, so they claim. We've discussed that on our channel. And AM signals can get scrambled by electromagnetic hum of EV batteries and motors, creating an annoying static sound. However, this has been fixed back in the 50s. They just don't want to pay for the extra shielding. So again, it comes back to pricing.
So there you have it, right?
Not just what
it's really coming down to dollars. And if you're a company and you can save a couple of dollars here or a couple of dollars there, and still sell your vehicles at an extraordinary rate, then why wouldn't you do that? If we are the people that believe in the free market, and if we are the people that believe in profit and capitalism, then in no way should we be mandating that a car manufacturer build anything into their vehicle. And let's talk about seatbelts for a minute. You know, just about every vehicle you buy nowadays has to have a seatbelt in it. But the question is, how can the government force a private company to produce a product and put something like a seatbelt in it? Well, it's because Congress has decided that they can pass laws to prevent stupid people from killing themselves. All right, sounds a little bit harsh, Mr. Producer.
Well, I was just reminiscing back in the days when, I remember the first time I saw seatbelts in a pickup sometime in the early 70s. Like, what is this?
Right.
It's kind of weird. But if you go back to the voting reaction, how the public voted back in the 50s and 60s, compare that to how they vote now after we've saved the lives of so many stupid people. There are unintended consequences everywhere you look.
There you go. The unintended consequences of Congress is that stupid people can continue to vote. Now, what I'm getting at here is that it is absolutely unconstitutional to pass a law that protects you from yourself. Really, the only law that is justified is one that protects the rights of others. It is John Stuart Mill's Harm's principle that your rights end where mine began. In other words, that the government doesn't have the authority or the right to pass any law except to protect individual rights. And if you're the dumb person that wants to drive 80 miles an hour down the interstate and not wear your seatbelt, well, the only person you're going to harm if you roll your truck is you, because that's the only person that's protected by a seatbelt. We have similar laws like helmets on motorcycles. Personally, I think you're a moron if you don't wear a helmet while you're on a motorcycle. Having been through a motorcycle wreck, kind of a nasty one, I'll never ride a bike without a helmet on. And the point is that you have to take personal responsibility for your actions. And so when the government passes laws that presumably protect you from yourself, it is completely outside of the Constitution. Now, how did I get there from AM radios? Well, this bill is being pushed under the guise of safety. Those who would give up essential liberty for a little temporary safety deserve neither. The truth, and the argument goes like this, that there are some places in this country that you can only get an AM radio station. So if you need to get updated on something that's happening, maybe there's an earthquake or a tornado, or the rapture has finally begun. The only place that you can get that is with an AM radio, and that's their argument. Well, if we should be allowing the free market to operate independently of what government does, and if consumers don't want a vehicle that doesn't have an AM radio in it, then they won't buy it. And then as a manufacturer, well, then you'll be forced to put the AM radio back in there. But that is not the principle that we're operating on right now.
Yeah, there are some that would say, well, if we didn't mandate seatbelts be put in vehicles, they wouldn't be put in vehicles. I don't think so. I think that people gravitate toward what they think are good ideas and good products. Look at the growth of Toyota over the last 30 or 40 years. They turned out an outstanding product. It's not a commercial for them. I've never owned one. I owned these old pickups before they put in seatbelts.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. Is that if you produce a good product, people will buy it. And if it has features that consumers like, well, then they will continue to buy it. And the point here is that if we are truly capitalists, and if we believe that we're capitalists, we need to stay the heck out of the free market. So let's see, that's not Ted Cruz. That's the next story. But anyway, it's from The Blaze. Listen to this. Your favorite car has all the usual shiny new entertainment tech, but you're in the mood for an old favorite. You skip past the buttons for satellite radio and Bluetooth connectivity to tune in to your ever reliable source of news, sports, and even life-saving alerts in a crisis. Then it hits you. There's no AM radio. Think back to the 1960s when seatbelts weren't standard. Automakers fought mandates then, too, calling them costly and unnecessary until the lives saved proved them wrong. Let's see here. The AM radio for Every Vehicle Act is heading towards a Senate vote after clearing the Commerce Committee back in February, with bipartisan support and an endorsement from FCC Chairman Brendan Carr. Of course, he's going to give an endorsement of AM radio. This bill could ensure that AM radio stays in every new car. But why is this even a fight? Well, you heard the soundbite that said, one of the reasons, or a couple of the reasons, that manufacturers aren't including AM radio in their vehicles is, one, cost, because, maybe it costs a couple of dollars more to upgrade the radio, and two, that you have to have electronic shielding. Now, Agent 29, if I turned on this AM radio that sits behind me, what's it going to do? Are we going to have a clear signal in this place?
We're going to have a shout. I've seen the power cord on that radio. It needs a little. OSHA doesn't want to see that.
Well, my point is that if you turned on an AM radio in the middle of all of this electronic equipment, what's going to happen?
Well, you get interference. It's funny on that soundbite. They said, it's fixed in the 50s. Well, I've got a 2006, and that Denali will make the radio scream. So probably need new plug wires.
Probably.
There are issues with interference. Yes.
Right. And so, if you're the manufacturer that doesn't want to fix that, you want to save a couple of bucks, fine, put out your product and see if consumers want it. The truth is, my friends, is that your product should rise and fall on its own merits. That if you produce a good product, people will buy it. People will listen. And if you are Rush Limbaugh, or a new, budding Rush Limbaugh, and you want your program to succeed, well, it has to succeed on its own merits. If you're a moron and you just keep talking, nobody's going to listen to you, aka Alec Baldwin. And it's one of those things that we have to believe in the free market. And if we're the people that argue for it, we have to act like it and stop all of this, transparent attempts at pushing our own political causes. We'll be back in a It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. to get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia, Nova Scotia. I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France. Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property, everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to continue to expand. This program is available at YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble. Podcast, you can get it anywhere that you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Now, there is another piece of legislation that is making its way through Congress, and this one deals with, among other things, revenge porn, and it's called the Take It Down Act. From Breitbart, and I quote, let me just read you a couple of paragraphs here. The House of Representatives passed the Take It Down Act, which criminalizes the posting of real and AI-generated sexually explicit photos without a person's consent. In a 409-2 vote, the House passed a bill introduced by Senator Ted Cruz that would require covered platforms to remove non-consensual intimate visual depictions and for other purposes. The Take It Down Act generally prohibits, quote, the non-consensual online publication of intimate visual depictions of individuals, both authentic and computer-generated, and requires certain online platforms to promptly remove such depictions upon receiving notice of their existence. All right. First, we already have laws that cover this. They're called defamation. Now, admittedly, it is pretty hard to prove any sort of defamation lawsuit. But the truth is, you can't publish something that is untrue about somebody else. Now, if you write it, it's called libel. Now, again, you have to sue, but we do have a law. We have a slander law. You can't say something that's untrue about somebody. You can be sued for it.
How does Cowboy State Daily keep going then?
Well, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Just wondering.
I mean, they say a whole bunch of stuff that's not true about folks like you, Agent 29. If you read a politics article out of the cow pie, generally speaking, it's just opinion. They're not really telling you the truth. But I think the problem with this Take It Down Act is not its intent. I think its intent is good. You shouldn't have to put up with publications, printing or publishing things about you that are not true, explicit pictures or otherwise. Now, there was a bill in the Wyoming legislature that pretty much dealt with the exact same thing. The problem, though, that I see is that all of these bills are too focused, that we are trying to pass a piece of legislation that is focused simply on posting an AI-generated image that is not true about somebody, posting a porn video that you made in secret about somebody else in an attempt to defame their character. But anybody who's studied politics in any way, shape, or form should understand that politics are always downstream from culture. What I mean is that it's very difficult to pass laws that keep up with what's going on culturally. That AI and technology and our opinions change much faster than any sort of law or politics or legislature can keep up with. And if you're trying to pass laws that deal with a specific instance of, say, revenge porn or AI generated images, by the time you get that thing passed, it's already going to be old news. And I have a real problem with these specialized laws. Not the intent. I don't have a problem with the reasoning behind it. In fact, I think they're probably right on target. But the problem that I have is that they're going to be obsolete here pretty quick. Why aren't we passing legislation that's more broad?
I think there are several things in there. Every lawmaker, I believe, has some kind of a matrix where they analyze bills and, should I vote for or against this? And one of the things that's on my matrix is it enforceable? Now, yeah, there are some laws that we have on the books that frankly are not enforceable, but they're strong enough of principle that we need to have it there. This one comes close to that in my mind. I appreciate the intent as you do. But the way technology moves, you alluded to this, the way technology moves so quickly, it's very difficult to keep up with it with specialized legislation. But the key thing you said at the very outset, we already have laws against defamation. We just pile more on and more on. And, I used the word moron.
Exactly right. And I think that the part of the problem here, you mentioned the enforceability of it, which I think is an excellent point, is that if you publish something online, it doesn't take very long at all for it to go viral. And if it is something salacious, it's a porn picture or a porn video or something like that, it's going to go viral very, very quickly. And it's kind of the problem is a bit like trying to unring a bell. That you hear that phrase all the time in court. What it means is that you prejudiced the jury. That even though somebody objected to it, the jury's already heard it and they're already going to make a decision on whatever it is that you've said. And that's the case with, I think, a lot of this, AI generated or revenge porn or whatever.
Yeah. The press does that. A lot of times they'll be sitting in the press room, and how do I know? Because I did actually work in that industry at one point. They'll have a discussion that says, well, we know this is not true, but by the time it catches up, we will have made our impact.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you print your retraction a week and a half later. On such and such a day in such and such an article, we said this, that was incorrect. Now, we're not even at that point now. We've moved way past printing retractions. In fact, in the Cowboy, I've only seen one or two ever printed. And one of them was because I threw an absolute fit and, demanded that I have a retraction. But usually they just go in and stealth edit something.
So back, I think it was 82, the election of 82, I was working closely with the Russ Donnelly campaign. Russ was running for governor. Some of you know Russ, great guy. And a few weeks before the primary was to come, because Russ had actually got some traction, they came up with a concocted story about some sort of a land, shady dealings having to do with some land. And they ran that story knowing full well there was nothing to it. It did the damage. Russ lost the votes, ended up losing the election. And then, exactly as you would predict, on page 6 of the Casper Star, here comes a retraction. Oh, sorry, this was baseless.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Once the election is over, and the best example of this is Joe Biden. Anybody with a brain, and again, I'm assuming that the folks in the media actually have a brain, and I think they were pretty devious with this, but anybody could have seen that Joe Biden was declining. All the stuff you're hearing right now about, oh, we missed this, we didn't get it right. Oh, what a mistake. We whiffed on that one. How did we not see that the president was completely out of his mind? Well, you didn't want to, and it didn't serve your political interests, so that you ignored it. And now media outlets are coming out trying to, do the mea culpa, saying, oh, bad on us. We didn't see this, and we're really sorry. Please listen to us again. All of that is a calculation. All of it is an attempt to sway voters into believing things that aren't true. Think about all the articles that were printed about Trump. I mean, just some of them are true, some of them are not. But the media doesn't really care because they know that you can't unring a bell. And just go on Facebook and see how many people have Trump derangement syndrome that will parrot anything they hear about Donald Trump and portray it as fact. I'm sure just about everybody within the sound of my voice has had a fact check done on them on Facebook. And you look at that and say, well, there's no way possible that that's even correct. By the way, here's 10 articles that prove it's wrong. But facts don't matter. And if you're going to pass a law that says you can't post explicit images of somebody, first of all, it's already defamation. It's already against the law. Well, again, if your intended purpose is to harm the character of somebody, that's going to already be done. And no law, no recompense, no lawsuit, no nothing is going to stop that bell from ringing. And it's, I agree with the sentiment here, but we've got to enforce the laws that we have. And I'm sure, Agent 29, we could sit here and probably talk all afternoon about laws that we don't need because they're already covered. I mean, the classic example of that is a lot of the gun legislation that's coming out right now. I'm a big fan of the SAPA bill we passed a couple of years ago, but the reality is it's a pretty sad commentary on the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment already says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed is pretty darn clear, but here we are all happy. Well, most of us are happy that we have a law that says you can't take somebody's firearms. Well, that's already spelled out in the Constitution. And yet we have to have a law that says that you can't do that. Well, we've pretty much burned up the entire broadcast hour. Make sure that you stay tuned to Cowboy State Politics Live. As I mentioned, tomorrow on the podcast, I'm going to publish that full interview with Bob Ferguson. The whole thing really is a pretty good discussion. It runs about 30 minutes, and I'll publish that on the podcast tomorrow.
I just wanted to say that I've been in contact with Representative Tony Locke.
Oh, yeah.
Casper,
how is the good representative?
He is dandy. He's getting a little bit of sleep finally, so he's a little less grouchy. Well, all of us come out of session just kind of, but we discussed the themes for 4 or 5 episodes of Locked and Loaded. And if you can promote your little broadcast with the Jenningses, I think we ought to be able to mention Locked and Loaded as well.
I think so.
And it's my hope that one day we can build a network back the way it ought to be.
It'd be nice if we already had one, wouldn't it?
It would be. What would we call it?
Oh, I don't know. We've yet to figure that out. We got more coming for what used to be called the Independence Network. Just stay tuned. Good stuff takes time, just like good beer. You may not know this about Agent 29, but he's an excellent beer brewer. And, I've been told that good beer, I don't drink it, but, good beer takes time from what I've been told.
Well, I gave up drinking myself ever since the invention of the funnel.
Yeah.
It's a joke, people.
All right. Make sure that you stay tuned to the program. We'll be back tomorrow for another installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. For now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.